With less than 1 month to go before the US presidential election day, will American voters place priority on economic recovery above how the COVID-19 health crisis was managed? Before COVID-19, the US had been experiencing the longest economic expansion of its history, with stock market rebound, lower unemployment rate, and an increase in the average income of American households. After the virus hit the country severely, more than 20 million American jobs were lost, affecting society's most vulnerable. Some industries thrived while others barely survived. HEC Paris professor Jeremy Ghez analyzes the stakes ahead for the US presidential elections.
The US economy created more than 650,000 jobs in September, and the unemployment rate fell from 8.4 to 7.9%. Since May, the US economy has created 11 million jobs, about half of the number of jobs the health crisis and the subsequent lockdowns destroyed. So is this US economy on the road to recovery? This is a critical question. Poll after poll, we see that Americans credit Donald Trump for the good performance of the US economy. After all, before the health crisis, the US experienced its longest expansion of its history. It lasted 128 months, or 8 more than the previous record established between the end of the Cold War and the 9/11 attacks. In addition, recent positive news about long-term economic trends tend to confirm that economically speaking, the US is doing quite well. We learned last month that in 2019, before the pandemic started, the median income of US households increased by nearly 7%. Supporters of the president have suggested that the current administration's effort to deregulate and to reform the very complex US tax code, like it did in 2017, helped businesses hire, leading the financial situations of all Americans, including the most vulnerable ones, to improve. In addition, reports have shown that the stimulus checks that most Americans received as part of the response of the US government to the recession have been used in part to invest in stock markets. The stock market rebound that we observed this spring and this summer has contributed to a 7% increase of the net worth of US households in the second quarter of 2020. This explains why the stock market rebound is so important for US households. So all in all, had it not been for this health crisis, the expansion could have continued, most Americans seem to believe. If the US is indeed on the road to recovery, this would significantly strengthen the re-election chances of Donald Trump. This explains why the US president is often referring to the state of the US economy, because this may be his best chance for re-election. It also re-explains why, in spite of the fact that Americans are not pleased with the way the health crisis has been managed, the incumbent president, Donald Trump, still has his chances of being re-elected. The economic argument, we all know, has always been influential. But here's a paradox. Though Americans credit President Trump for the state of this economy, polls also suggest that they blame him for how this crisis was managed. There are reasons to believe, in fact, that the argument about the state of the economy may not be as impactful as it has been in the past. First, there's a question of timing and speed of this recovery. The creation of more than 650,000 jobs in September suggests that the job creation in the United States is actually slowing down. May was a clear turning point, but we may have reached the end of this process when the US economy is still missing 10 million jobs compared to before the pandemic. A UBS economist, Brian Rose, believes that 5 million Americans may have lost their jobs permanently. A hiring lab in the US called Indeed also found that job postings in big cities like New York and San Francisco are down by 30% compared to 2019. It may be years before the labor market recovers from this. So whereas the supporters of Donald Trump were hoping for a quick V-shaped recovery, with the economy rebounding as quickly as it descended into recession, other economists are fearful about the prospect of a slow, laborious recovery. Instead of a V-shaped recovery, they imagine more of a swoosh-like bounce, taking the shape of a very famous sports brand logo. But in addition to the timing and the speed of the recovery, there's also the question of who will benefit most from this recovery. Now, there's a joke among economists that we tend to relearn the alphabet in times of crisis in order to determine the shape that the recovery will take. According to this view, the rebound will neither look like a V nor a swoosh, but more like a K. with part of the economy and part of the population enjoying a rebound, while other sectors of the economy, along with the most vulnerable Americans, continue to experience major difficulties and cannot bounce back. In fact, 2019 and the rebound of stock markets this year may have been very positive news for many Americans, but this may not last. The effects of this crisis has been very unequal. In the words of the Washington Post, no other recession in modern history has so plummeted society's most vulnerable. They add, job losses from the pandemic overwhelmingly affected low-wage, minority workers most. 7 months into recovery, Black women, Black men, and mothers of school-age children are taking the longest time to regain their employment, the paper added. During the Great Recession of 2008, the effects of the job market were far more evenly distributed, but not this time. Similarly, some economic sectors like tech, some parts of retail, and software services are thriving in a post-COVID business environment. Others, like travel and airline industries, entertainment, hospitality, and food services, are greatly affected. Job cuts in the airline industry or at Disney last week serve as powerful reminders that this recovery is at best uneven. As a result, the timing, the speed, and the question of who benefits from this recovery are all critical questions that could undermine this White House narratives of an improving economy. It could undermine, as a result, the chances of Trump's re-election. The way this crisis has been managed, the fact that it has affected so many vulnerable Americans, are both likely to play an influential role in this incoming debates, as influential, potentially, as the state of the economy has played in the past. You may wonder about other key, crucial topics too, like Americans' foreign policy and intentions around the globe, especially with regards to international trade, or the balance on the Supreme Court after the death of Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, or even the future of the American Social Pact in the wake of racial tensions we saw again this summer. Trust your intuition. These questions matter, but it feels as if they are largely overshadowed by the current economic conditions Americans live in and perceive every single day. The main obstacle to recovery remains the health crisis. So long as this health crisis lasts, expect the tensions between economic recovery on the one hand and health crisis management to be at the heart of the campaign debates. Unless an unexpected event changes the very course we are on, obviously, but at this point, I must be honest, it is hard to imagine what game changer would. So let's remain attentive, and until next time.